How many of you who have a Facebook account actually read the terms of service? These programs, mass surveillance, is not about public safety. It is about power. I think if any of the founders of this country looked around today, they would be shocked by the kind of rhetoric they hear, and they would be shocked by the kind of activities of government they see. The harder you make their work, the more free you make your society. The government should be afraid of the people. People shouldn't be afraid of the government.
So, Ed Snowden, a lot of people in this country are probably curious, when was the last time you had substantive discussions about coming home to the United States?
The United States will always be my home. And I'll always be willing to come back on a single condition. This is that the government guarantee that I have the right, and every whistleblower has the right, to tell the jury why they did what they did. If you look around at the world right now, when you look at news, when you look at news coverage, when you look at every controversy that we see, something has changed. And that is that it has become increasingly popular for your feelings to matter more than the facts. And I think that's toxic to a democracy, because if there's one thing that we have to be able to have this discussion, to be able to learn to live with people that we disagree with, we can't have a conversation about what we should do. We can't have a conversation about where we are going if we can't agree on where we are, if we can't agree on what is happening. Facts have to matter more than feelings. The world of 2013, some suspected that this was happening. The world after 2013, we know that it's happening. And this is the critical importance of journalism, particularly in this moment that we have today. The distance between speculation and fact is everything in a democracy, because that's what lets us, as we did post-2013, change our laws. What they are selling is not information. What they're selling is us. They're selling our future. They're selling our past. They're selling our history, our identity, and ultimately, they are stealing our power and making our stories work for them. I have tremendous respect for journalists, but I try to keep a distance, particularly in this moment where so much of journalism is coming under attack. Because the government has a tremendous incentive to discredit me, to make people distrust me. And so if I hold myself out, if I start reporting stories, if I start talking to sources, if I try to start advancing what the public knows on a personal level, my reputation could sort of poison the well. Instead, I keep a distinction. What I do is I try to aid the work of journalism. We can stop a program. We can make a device more secure. But as you implied, the system is still there. The institutions and agencies and companies that produced these attacks, that are creating new methods of spying every day, will still be there. The fundamental change, not just in the United States, but around the world, that has to happen is we have to stop thinking about the limitations on how data is used as data protection regulations. Right now, when we talk about what the NSA is doing, right now, when we talk about what rival governments are doing, what the Russians are doing, what the Chinese are doing, what the North Koreans and the Iranians are doing, we're constantly thinking about, all right, this data has been collected and these companies have it. How do we regulate their use? Regulating the use is a mistake. We should do that, but that's the wrong focus. It is the collection of data that is the problem. When you start trying to regulate use, the collection has already happened. The collection was already legal. One of the fundamental flaws in US privacy legislation is the fact that we are one of the only advanced democracies in the world that does not have any basic privacy law whatsoever. And as you know, as everybody knows, these companies are playing a bigger and bigger part in the world today. We have to say, all of these records that they're creating about all of us, all of this control that they're developing from these surveillance programs, these records belong to the people that they are about, not to the companies. And this is a fundamental change that we have never discussed in a meaningful way, broadly or publicly, but we have to, because all of these governments have said, the mass surveillance system, why do we have it? Why is it useful? These programs, mass surveillance is not about public safety. It is about power. It is about economic espionage. It is about diplomatic manipulation, and it is about social influence. It is about understanding the actions of everyone in the world as carefully as they can, no matter who they are, no matter how innocent their life. I think if any of the founders of this country looked around today, they would be shocked by the kind of rhetoric they hear, and they would be shocked by the kind of activities of government they see. They're making life for law enforcement officials harder. And all of the founding fathers thought that was a good idea, because they recognize the more efficient a government is, the more dangerous it is. We want a government always that is not too efficient. We want a government always that is just efficient enough, because government holds extraordinary power in our lives. We want government always to be using their powers in a way that is only necessary and proportionate to the threat presented by whoever it is that they're investigating. When the government is getting by the skin of their teeth, the people are free, right? The government should be afraid of the people. People shouldn't be afraid of the government. A lot of people will look at this and they'll think about the fact that the government constantly lies when they're exposed. They just find an excuse and they extend these programs, they rename these programs, they keep operating. And this is what we should expect, and this is how it will work, and this is how it is happening. But people become disempowered, they become hopeless, they think it doesn't matter, they think it wasn't worth it, right? But this awareness of the problem led to a new effort to resist these abuses and to create new safeguards and new protections. It is the ecosystem that is the problem. And it is our decisions as a society that have allowed this ecosystem that is very much poisonous, polluted, and toxic to the public visual life to come to pass. But just as decisions got us here, decisions can take us from here. The better and brighter rather than darker future.
These people all believe they have the most important job in the world. They believe they are pushing back the darkness of a grim and dangerous world every single day, no matter what they're doing, even if they're fixing printers, right? What we are seeing really is a technological arms race between the richest companies in the world, the most powerful governments in the history of the species, and then a lot of people in economically precarious, politically disenfranchised, and otherwise disadvantaged positions who are seeking to effect change on a local level. And on the one hand, you have governments that have 30,000 people who are just on its own internal classified network, who are able to go in every day, 9 to 5, and with all their different missions, watch the whole world to the best of what their technological capability happens to be that week, and every week it gets better. But that doesn't mean there's nothing we can do. That doesn't mean we can give up. I think what I always advise people to do is to try to understand technology that you're using, at least generally. You have to understand that in places, in agencies and governments where, again, they see themselves as the shield against change, because instability is the enemy, instability is the bad thing, progress looks like a threat. And so when you start to understand that you will always be the enemy to them, even if what you're doing is absolutely right, even if you are the most peaceful, even if you keep your nose clean, even if you are the perfect angel that they always deny that any activist is when they run up against law enforcement, because in reality, everyone's life is complicated and we all have to make hard choices. We need to understand how it is that we are targeted, at least generally, that technologies will change. These things are great for the moment, but they don't protect you. They're not an invisibility cloak. It's not a get out of jail free card. What it does is it reduces your window of vulnerability. People get nervous about this. They think it sounds radical, but you have to understand that in the United States, if you believe the lofty rhetoric that we put in founding documents, right, which we all know we're not so perfect, but if we believe the things that we were taught is the way America is supposed to be, the work of law enforcement is supposed to be hard. It is supposed to be difficult. The extraordinary powers that they are granted are supposed to be used as a last resort when there's a real public safety imperative in play here. And their actions, whatever they may be, despite the gravity of the threat, are supposed to be limited to what is necessary and proportionate to the threat presented.